Hi, you can call me the narrator. Today I'll guide you through the incredible tale of a man chosen by God to deliver his people, despite his own feelings of inadequacy. Once upon a time in the land of Israel, the people were oppressed by the Midianites after turning away from the Lord. The Israelites cried out to the Lord for help, and he sent them a prophet who said,
"This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought you up out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. I rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians, and I delivered you from the hand of all your oppressors. I drove them out before you and gave you their land. I said to you, I am the Lord your God. Do not worship the gods of the Amorites in whose land you live. But you have not listened to me."
Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak tree which was in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, while his son Gideon threshed wheat in the winepress in order to hide it from the Midianites. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him,
"The Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor."
O my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his miracles which our fathers told us about, saying, Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites.
Go in this might of yours, and you shall save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have I not sent you?
O my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house.
Surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat the Midianites as one man.
If now I have found favor in your sight, then show me a sign that it is you who talk with me. Do not depart from here, I pray, until I come to you and bring out my offering and set it before you.
I will wait until you come back.
So Gideon went in and prepared a young goat, and unleavened bread from an ephah of flour. The meat he put in a basket, and he put the broth in a pot. And he brought them out to him under the terebinth tree and presented them. The angel of God said to him,
"Take the meat and the unleavened bread and lay them on this rock, and pour out the broth."
And he did so. Then the angel of the Lord put out the end of the staff that was in his hand, and touched the meat and the unleavened bread. And fire rose out of the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened bread. And the angel of the Lord departed out of his sight. Now Gideon perceived that he was the angel of the Lord. So Gideon said,
Alas, O Lord God, for I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face.
Then the Lord said to him,
"Peace be with you. Do not fear. You shall not die."
So Gideon built an altar there to the Lord, and called it, "The Lord is Peace." Now it came to pass the same night that the Lord said to him,
"Take your father's young bull, the second bull of 7 years old, and tear down the altar of Baal that your father has, and cut down the wooden image that is beside it, and build an altar to the Lord your God on top of this rock in the proper arrangement. And take the second bull, and offer a burnt sacrifice with the wood of the image, which you shall cut down."
So Gideon took 10 men from among his servants, and did as the Lord had said to him. But because he feared his father's household and the men of the city too much to do it by day, he did it by night. And when the men of the city arose early in the morning, there was the altar of Baal torn down, and the wooden image that was beside it was cut down, and the second bull was being offered on the altar which had been built. So they said to one another,
"Who has done this thing?"
And when they had inquired and asked, they said,
"Gideon the son of Joash has done this thing."
Then the men of the city said to Joash,
"Bring out your son, that he may die, because he has torn down the altar of Baal, and because he has cut down the wooden image that was beside it."
But Joash said to all who stood against him,
Would you plead for Baal? Would you save him? Let the one who would plead for him be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him plead for himself, because his altar has been torn down.
Therefore, on that day, he called Gideon Jerubbaal, saying,
Let Baal plead against him, because he has torn down his altar.
Then all the Midianites and Amalekites, the people of the east, gathered together, and they crossed over and encamped in the valley of Jezreel. But the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon. Then he blew the trumpet, and the Abiezrites gathered behind him. And he sent messengers throughout all Manasseh, who also gathered behind him. He also sent messengers to Asher Zebulun, and Naphtali, and they came up to meet them. So Gideon said to God,
"If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, look, I shall put a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece only, and it is dry on all the ground, then I shall know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said."
And it was so. When he rose early the next morning and squeezed the fleece together, he wrung the dew out of the fleece, a bowl full of water. Then Gideon said to God,
"Do not be angry with me, but let me speak just once more. Let me test, I pray, just once more with the fleece. Let it now be dry only on the fleece, but on all the ground let there be dew."
And God did so that night. It was dry on the fleece only, but there was dew on all the ground. Then Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all the people who were with him rose early and encamped beside the well of Harod, so that the camp of the Midianites was on the north side of them, by the hill of Moreh in the valley. And the Lord said to Gideon,
"The people who are with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel claim glory for itself against me, saying, 'My own hand has saved me.' Now therefore, proclaim in the hearing of the people, saying, 'Whoever is fearful and afraid, let him turn and depart at once from Mount Gilead.'"
And 22,000 of the people returned, and 10,000 remained. But the Lord said to Gideon,
"The people are still too many. Bring them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. Then it will be, that of whom I say to you, 'This one shall go with you,' the same shall go with you. And of whomever I say to you, 'This one shall not go with you,' the same shall not go."
So he brought the people down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon,
"Everyone who laps from the water with his tongue, as a dog laps, you shall set apart by himself. Likewise everyone who gets down on his knees to drink."
And the number of those who lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, was 300 men. But all the rest of the people got down on their knees to drink water. Then the Lord said to Gideon,
"By the 300 men who lapped I will save you, and deliver the Midianites into your hand. Let all the other people go, every man to his place."
So the people took provisions and their trumpets in their hands. And he sent away all the rest of Israel, every man to his tent, and retained those 300 men. Now the camp of Midian was below him in the valley. It happened on the same night that the Lord said to him,
"Arise, go down against the camp, for I have delivered it into your hand. But if you are afraid to go down to the camp with Purah your servant, and you shall hear what they say, and afterward your hands shall be strengthened to go down against the camp."
Then he went down with Purah his servant to the outpost of the armed men who were in the camp. Now the Midianites and Amalekites, all the people of the east, were lying in the valley as numerous as locusts, and their camels were without number, as the sand by the seashore in multitude. And when Gideon had come, there was a man telling a dream to his companion. He said,
"I have had a dream. To my surprise, a loaf of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian. It came to a tent and struck it so that it fell and overturned, and the tent collapsed."
Then his companion answered and said,
"This is nothing else but the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. Into his hand God has delivered Midian and the whole camp."
And so it was, when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and its interpretation, that he worshipped. He returned to the camp of Israel and said,
"Arise, for the Lord has delivered the camp of Midian into your hand."
Then he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet into every man's hand, with empty pitchers and torches inside the pitchers. And he said to them,
"Look at me and do likewise. Watch, and when I come to the edge of the camp, you shall do as I do. When I blow the trumpet, I and all who are with me, then you also blow the trumpets on every side of the whole camp and say, 'The sword of the Lord and of Gideon.'"
So Gideon and the 100 men who were with him came to the outpost of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just as they had posted the watch. And they blew the trumpets and broke the pitchers that were in their hands. Then the 3 companies blew the trumpets and broke the pitchers. They held the torches in their left hands and the trumpets in their right hands for blowing. And they cried, "The sword of the Lord and of Gideon." And every man stood in his place all around the camp. and the whole army ran and cried out and fled. After Gideon's army of 300 men surprised the Midianites with trumpets and torches, causing confusion and leading to a Midianite retreat, Gideon called for reinforcements from Ephraim and other tribes. The men of Ephraim captured 2 Midianite princes, Oreb and Zeb, and killed them. Gideon explained that he had not called them earlier because the victory was already assured by God. This explanation satisfied the men of Ephraim, and their anger toward Gideon subsided. Gideon and his army pursued the remaining enemies. Along the way, Gideon asked for food from the people of Sukkoth and Penuel, but they refused, fearing reprisal from the Midianites. Gideon promised to return and punish them after the victory. Gideon and his men captured the 2 Midianite kings, Zebah and Zalmunna, and brought them back to Israel. Gideon then carried out his promise, punishing the men of Sukkoth and Penuel for their lack of support. Afterward, Gideon was asked to rule over Israel, but he refused, saying that God alone should rule over them. Gideon asked for gold earrings from the plunder, which he used to make an ephod, a priestly garment, which became a snare to him and his family. Gideon had 70 sons who were his own offspring, for he had many wives. The land had peace for 40 years during Gideon's lifetime. From Gideon's life, we learn that God can use even the most unlikely individuals to accomplish his purposes. Gideon started as a fearful and hesitant man, but through God's guidance and empowerment, he became a mighty warrior and leader. Gideon's story reminds us that God looks beyond our weaknesses and sees our potential to be used for his kingdom. It encourages us to trust in God's strength rather than our own, and to be willing to step out in faith, even when we feel inadequate.